Welcome back to The Rock here in Midrand. For more analysis, I'm joined by political analyst Dr Hlengiwe Ndlovu. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining us. So, of course, the election campaigns are done and dusted, and we're waiting for the main polling day tomorrow. But what were your observations around the participation of women in the election campaigns? And fast forward to June the 3rd, how important will it be for any government formation to ensure that it has women there at the highest level?
Thank you so much. So with the observation around elections and the participation of women in general, and I think this goes back to history of every movement, of every socio-economic formation in the country. Women have carried each and every movement. Even through these campaigns, women have carried these campaigns, whether they are doing the work behind the scenes, behind the closed door, because most of the work that is done by women is invisible work. But we've seen them even on public platforms. I remember observing one of the women of the EFF in one of the rural areas in the Eastern Cape. She was doing literally, educating people about voting, but also explaining to them how are they going to identify the party on the ballot paper. But also beyond that, I mean, it's always women. We are the majority of voters. If I'm not mistaken, I think we constitute 55% of the registered voters. But the representation remains, skewed towards men. It would seem like South Africa, like many other countries, they are not yet ready, for a female president or for a woman president. So the question of representation is very key if we are to think about transformation, if we are to think about equality and everything. The question of transformation remains key for whoever comes into the administration.
Yeah. So what about governance? We know governance has been a major problem in South Africa. We've got the state capture era that we always refer to. How important, or what tools or list of issues or items could you reel off that would be needed to ensure that the highest level of governance is instituted in the 7th administration? Because good governance equals, good results on the ground for your ordinary South African.
Absolutely. I mean, we can talk about democracy, we can talk about governance, but if there are not tangible outcomes in terms of what is democracy, in terms of what are the outcomes of democracy, we haven't started talking about democracy. So when we are to talk about good governance, we need to set up standards in terms of what do we mean. And I know that there's been, a lot of criticism, and this is some of the work that I write about, to say perhaps our idea of what is good governance, because it's a borrowed concept. So sometimes that's where we miss it, because we have failed, to align it with our own experiences at home, to ground it within our own context, and in terms of when we are saying good governance, what would it look like? So issues of accountability, they remain very calm. So an accountable government, an accountable, public civil servants, for instance, and it's so amazing how in these different spaces people just engage in corruption. Simple things as getting a license, so those, they might look small, because at the end of the day they don't make it to the headlines of the news, to the front pages, and but at the same time they matter. So it begins with each and every one public servant doing their everyday work, but also ensuring that they are accountable in whatever that they are doing. But also talking about corruption, that has been, the subject of the state capture, but also threatening our democracy at the moment. There are no repercussions, it would seem like, for some of those activities, and what it means for the ordinary person. We ask difficult questions as South Africans, but no accountability whatsoever. Yeah. So all of those are very pressing issues.
The ANC government, or even the ANC party, has been talking for the longest time, for many years, about building a capable state. And we know that's so very important, because you need to have a functioning state with people with the right skills to make things happen and create a conducive environment, for the economy to thrive, etc., etc. How do you, or what advice would you give around how to ensure that you build a capable state, and how do you make the public servant corruption-proof?
Yes. So in terms of building a capable state, you need to work with the population, right? You need to work with the citizens. You need to work with the young people, because also, they are the future of this country. So if they are left behind, if they are not carried on board, then it becomes quite challenging. But also you need to build safety nets, because one of our biggest challenges is crime in this country. And it's because we don't have a strong safety net in terms of, cushioning even those who still continue to struggle. Because as much as we are 30 years into democracy, our democracy is still quote-unquote young. And it has been threatened by a whole lot of socio-economic but also global factors. And we haven't really gotten a way of developing policies that are inclusive, but also that will take the country forward. So when you are talking about questions of sustainability, we think about some of these initiatives that have been put in place within Gauteng, Nasispan and other initiatives, and all these targeting youth unemployment.
Yeah.
But it is the question of sustainability for them, because if they are 6 months into this job and then next time they are out, of course we talk about experience, but you never get a job advert that requires 6 months experience, 1 year experience, right? You don't. So how are we then using all these mechanisms that we are putting into place, all these strategies, to come up with a sustainable strategy of building a capable state?
Doc, very quickly, you have 1 minute. What is your expectation come June the 3rd? What do you think the political landscape will look like?
Whoever, makes it to the union buildings, they must carry the agenda of the South Africans. I think the reason why we are seeing all these political parties mushrooming is because it would seem like no one is carrying the agenda of South Africans. Each and every person is carrying their own agenda. If we are going to the coalition government, if that happens, as the last resort, I guess, what are the compromises that the different political parties are prepared to make in the interest of South Africans, not to assert their power, not to assert their presence in the political space?
Point well made. In the interest of South Africans. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Hlengiwe Ndlovu speaking to us here at The Rock.